Hello, welcome to the channel. Subscribe, leave a like, and don't forget to write a comment. Enjoy watching.
I moved in with my sister Dana on a Tuesday, a gray morning in early February when the sky looked like wet cement and the house smelled like vanilla candles and denial. Our mother had died 3 weeks earlier, in that quiet, painful way old women do, full of stories, memories, and resentment that never quite got sorted out. I was 44, single, and emotionally demolished. I'd left behind a job I didn't care about and an apartment that felt too quiet to breathe in. Dana had offered a room, said it like it was a favor wrapped in gold ribbon. "Just until you find your footing," she said, smiling too hard, like someone trying to get credit for being gracious. Dana lived in the kind of house that came with seasonal wreaths on the front door and pre-measured spice jars in the pantry. Her husband Steve was polite in that corporate, I pretend to listen kind of way. Their kids, Maddie and Tyler, were sweet enough, if completely unaware that I wasn't just another guest staying for the holidays. The first few days, I mostly stayed in the guest room, the one with the two-firm bed and the paintings of abstract birds. I offered to help out dishes, laundry, watching the kids after school, but Dana would wave me off with a quick, "No, just relax. You've been through a lot." And I had. But the thing about grief is it doesn't give you much rest, even when people tell you to take it easy. So I tried to be useful in the only way that wouldn't make Dana look like a bad host. I started paying for things. Quietly, invisibly. It started with the groceries, just a few runs to the store when we ran out of eggs or milk. Then I ordered a new water heater when theirs broke, because Steve said the old one still kind of works and Dana had that frozen smile that said she didn't want to fight about it. I paid the plumber in cash. I paid the mechanic when their minivan made a sound like it was coughing up bolts. I paid for Tyler's science camp, because Dana said she didn't want to spoil him, but the look on that boy's face told me he knew he wasn't getting to go. And none of it was acknowledged. Not once. It was like I was part of the wallpaper, useful, present, and taken for granted. Dana told people she was helping me, which was rich, considering I was the one quietly loading money into their lives like a ghost with a checkbook. I kept my receipts to myself. I wasn't there to shame anyone. I just didn't want to feel like deadweight. I didn't want to be the charity case everyone whispered about over wine. By the time summer turned into fall, I was still in that guest room. My savings thinned out like worn jeans, my sense of self a little bruised from being politely ignored. I got a part-time gig at the library, which Dana called cute and Steve called a nice little distraction. I laughed it off, but inside something was hardening. Not bitter. Not yet. Just tired. When Halloween came around, I bought the kids their costumes. Maddie wanted to be a witch with real lace gloves, and Tyler wanted to be a ninja with plastic throwing stars. Dana posted a photo on Facebook with the caption, "So blessed to provide these moments," and I didn't comment. I just stared at it for a long time. Thanksgiving was more of the same. I cooked. I cleaned. I ordered a turkey that cost more than my phone bill. Dana's in-laws came over and congratulated her for opening her home to her sister. She said nothing to correct them. Steve just raised his wine glass and smiled like a man who'd learned to stay quiet when the credit was being handed out. And then came Christmas. The decorations went up early. Dana had the kids stringing lights in November. The house looked like a Pottery Barn catalog. I helped hang ornaments, the old ones from our childhood, the ones Mom used to hide in tissue paper like they were relics. No one mentioned her. I did. Once. Dana nodded and changed the subject. I had started to wonder if I'd made a mistake, letting grief push me into this house, this role, this slow erosion of dignity. I wasn't a guest anymore. I was furniture. Necessary but unspoken. That night, as we were cleaning up from a dinner I cooked again, Dana sipped her wine and looked at me over the rim of her glass. "It's been nice having you around," she said, that saccharine tone she used when delivering fake compliments or mild threats. "But I think it's time you started looking at apartments." Just like that. No warm-up. No, "how are you doing financially?" just the corporate cutoff. Steve didn't say a word. Maddie was in the other room watching a movie. Tyler was on the stairs, pretending not to listen but totally listening. I smiled. Not wide. Just enough to make her blink. Something inside me clicked into place, like a lock finally turning after years of jamming. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, folded it carefully, and set it on the counter. Of course, I said. You're right. But what I thought, what I felt, was something entirely different. It wasn't sadness. It wasn't anger. It was cold. Clean. Like frost forming on a window just before it cracks. The dining room looked like something out of a glossy magazine spread, polished wood table stretched long with rented chairs pulled from the garage, red and gold napkins folded into tidy triangles, name cards handwritten by Maddie with looping letters and glitter glue, and enough candles to make the place feel like some kind of upscale shrine to fake warmth. Dana had been prepping for 2 weeks straight, acting like she was throwing the goddamn governor's ball, all while reminding everyone, mostly me, that this was the most magical time of the year. Steve had ordered an expensive Pinot Noir, the kind that made him swirl the glass like he knew what tannins were, and the turkey had been roasted with rosemary from the little planter I'd bought last spring. I recognized half the dishes on the table as recipes I'd cooked over the past year, now proudly rebranded as Dana's Holiday Classics. I didn't say anything. I'd learned not to, because speaking up meant drawing attention, and drawing attention meant inviting that quiet little smirk Dana got when she reminded me, without words, that I wasn't the homeowner here. I was just the extra chair at the table. The placeholder. There were 11 of us total that night: Dana, Steve, the kids, a few friends from their wine club, and a couple from church I'd met maybe twice. Dana floated around in a silk blouse that probably cost more than my monthly paycheck, pouring drinks and laughing just a little too hard at Steve's stories about work drama. I sat near the end of the table, between Maddie and a woman named Joyce who complimented the cranberry sauce I'd made like it was store-bought. And then, somewhere between the stuffing and the second round of wine, someone raised a glass and said something simple to Melissa. For being part of this family. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't even particularly emotional. Just a polite, well-meaning toast from someone who probably didn't know the full picture. Dana didn't miss a beat. She set down her fork, tilted her head with a smile so fake it could have been printed on, and said, "You should be grateful we even let you stay." That was it. One sentence. 9 words. But they hit harder than anything I'd heard in the past year. The whole room stilled for just a second too long. Joyce looked down at her plate. Steve chuckled nervously and tried to pivot to something about the weather. One of the kids dropped a spoon. I didn't flinch. I didn't speak. I just took another bite of mashed potatoes and chewed like I hadn't heard a damn thing. But I had. I'd heard everything. In those 9 words, Dana told the whole room what she'd been thinking for months, that I was lucky to be here. That I should be thankful to sit at her table, sleep under her roof, breathe the same air as her curated life. She saw my silence as compliance. Most people did. What she didn't realize was that silence was something I'd learned to sharpen. Not a surrender, but a weapon. Because while she was playing the role of benevolent sister and domestic goddess, I had been running the invisible economy of this household for almost a year. I thought back to everything I'd covered. Groceries, yes, week after week, all charged to my card when Dana forgot her wallet or claimed she'd Venmo me later. The car maintenance. That busted dryer I replaced without saying a word. Tyler's orthodontist bill that somehow got misfiled until I paid it just to stop the collection calls. The Christmas tree, which I ordered online with free shipping and had delivered while Dana was at her yoga class. Then there were the bigger things. The mortgage payment, just once, Steve said, when a bonus didn't clear in time. But once turned into twice. Then 3 times. Between the groceries, the mortgage, and the $3,000 I paid for their son's tuition, I'd spent over $2,500 this year. Maybe more. Maybe I should have kept better track. But grief doesn't make you careful. it makes you quiet. It makes you willing to do anything not to be noticed, not to take up space. So I had done what I could to make myself useful. And now here I was, being told over expensive wine and perfectly roasted turkey that I should be grateful. That night, while Dana and Steve cleaned up and whispered in the kitchen, I sat in the guest room with my laptop open, staring at the blinking cursor for a long, long time. I didn't cry. Not even a little. Something about the whole night had shifted something inside me, something I didn't know was still flexible. I opened a folder I hadn't touched in months, one I had named when I first moved in, more as a joke than anything else. It was called Pull the Plug. Inside were documents, statements, screenshots, things I had saved without knowing exactly why. Bank transfers, payment receipts, emails about tuition, my name on insurance policies, my credit line listed on their refinance. I stared at the screen for a while, then moved the mouse. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, not exactly. But I knew I wasn't going to be quiet much longer. I had been grateful once. I had said thank you when I didn't need to. I had swallowed pride like bitter medicine, day after day, trying to keep things peaceful. But gratitude is a gift, not a leash. And Dana? Dana had just pulled too hard. I clicked into the first file. My finger hovered over the print button, then paused. No, not yet. It wasn't time to pull the plug. Not yet. But it was time to reach for it. The morning after Christmas always has a certain stillness to it, a kind of hollow quiet that settles in after the lights dim and the wrapping paper's been trashed and the illusions have had just enough time to deflate. But that particular morning felt different, like the air in the house had shifted somehow, grown thicker, heavier, more aware. I woke up early, maybe out of habit, or maybe because I knew what I was about to do would change everything. There wasn't a single part of me that felt uncertain. It was a rare thing, to be so sure, so utterly convinced that the right thing was the one that would burn everything down. I sat with my coffee in the dim kitchen, steam rising slow from the mug, and opened my laptop like I had a dozen times before, but this time with an intent as sharp as a knife. The automatic payments were the first to go. One by one, I canceled each transfer, each direct deposit, each quiet little pipeline from my bank account into theirs. No more utility coverage. No more backup for their mortgage when they fell behind. No more Venmo, just in case. It was as easy as clicking a box and typing in a password. Easier than forgiving them, certainly. Next, I called Tyler's school, the private one that cost more per year than my old salary had paid in two, and I told the office I would no longer be covering his tuition as a family sponsor. The woman on the phone asked if there had been a change in financial circumstances, and I said, "You could say that." She paused a little too long and offered a soft, obligatory, "I'm sorry, but I wasn't." After that came the gas card canceled. The joint phone plan, my name removed. Insurance policies pulled. Subscriptions, memberships, school lunch auto reloads, all undone in under an hour. It was stunning, in a way, just how much of the structure they depended on had quietly become mine. They hadn't even noticed, which told me everything I needed to know. I had been so invisible to them, they didn't even realize I was holding the house up like a pillar no one ever looked at until it cracked. Around 10, Dana called. I ignored the first ring, just watched the screen light up with her name. The second time, I picked up. She didn't say hello. "The card declined at the gas station," she said, clipped and sharp, like I'd broken a rule she forgot she made. I sipped my coffee and said, "Weird." There was silence on the line, a silence thick with things she didn't know how to ask. I hung up before she could fake her way through a sentence. An hour later, Steve texted me directly, no greeting, no punctuation. Just, "Did you stop the insurance?" I didn't write back with words. I sent a thumbs-up emoji and nothing else. It felt like poetry. By early afternoon, the messages came faster. Dana tried calling again. Then again. I turned off the ringer. She emailed me with the subject line urgent, but I didn't open it. The kids started to notice things, too. Maddie asked why the internet wasn't working, and Dana snapped at her in that sharp way parents do when they're unraveling and trying not to show it. The thermostat got turned down to 60, and the house suddenly felt larger, colder, echoing with small frustrations. That evening, I walked past the living room and saw Steve with 2 bills in his hand and a confused look on his face. Dana was pacing. Her voice was tight, whispering too loud to not be heard. I heard her say, "I don't know what she's doing. I don't even know how she was paying for this stuff." And that was the moment I realized it wasn't just that they didn't appreciate me, they hadn't even noticed me. I had been making their lives run, and they didn't even know which parts of their comfort were being held together by my hands. Later, as I headed out for my shift at the library, Dana stopped me at the door. Her voice was steady, but her eyes gave her away. "We need to talk," she said, like she had authority. I gave her a tight smile and said, "I'm late for work." I didn't give her more. She hadn't earned more. At the library, I shelved books like it was just another day, but around 7:30, right before close, I saw her through the front window, Dana, standing outside with her coat pulled tight, eyes narrowed like a storm cloud. She waited until the last patron left before coming in. She didn't say hello. She didn't apologize. She just walked right up to the counter and hissed, "What the hell are you doing to us?" I looked at her, really looked at her. Her lipstick was faded. Her hair was pulled back too tight. She looked tired, not just from the day, but from the kind of slow realization that maybe, just maybe, she had never been in control the way she thought she was. I leaned forward slightly and said, low enough to keep it just between us, "You should be grateful I let you stay standing." Then I turned back to my work, letting the silence settle between us like dust. Because Dana had made her move once. Now it was my turn to play the game. 2 days after Christmas, the snow outside had begun to turn from pristine white to that dirty sidewalk gray, the kind that matches the inside of car tires and the feeling of conversations that never got finished. I walked into the bank branch I'd used since college, nodding at the same security guard who still wore that faded blue jacket, and I sat down with the woman behind the glass cubicle who had known my name before my hair started going gray. She offered me coffee I didn't take and smiled like she thought I was coming in for something mundane, like a debit card reissue or a routine signature. Instead, I handed her a folder with the documents, account numbers, authorization letters, and a withdrawal request, and said, "I'd like to pull my name off the joint fund." Her eyebrows lifted, just barely, but she didn't ask questions. She just got to work. Within 15 minutes, the money that I had funneled into that so-called emergency fund, $6,000 over the last 20 months, was back in my control. I didn't take all of it. I left just enough to cover 1 month of expenses, because I wasn't cruel. Or maybe I was. But at least I wasn't careless. When the transaction was done, I walked out with a printout that told me I still existed, still had power, still could act. My heart wasn't racing. My palms weren't sweating. I wasn't seeking revenge. This wasn't some movie-style, slow-burn vengeance arc. It was simply a correction. A line drawn straight through the middle of a ledger that had been unbalanced for far too long. There are some things you do for family because you love them. And there are others you do because if you don't, no one else will. 2 years ago, when Dana and Steve were trying to refinance the house after Steve's failed business investment dried up their credit score like an Arizona lawn, they came to me with wide eyes and polite tones. I remember Dana placing her hand gently on mine and saying, "It's just a formality, Mel. You have great credit. We just need your name to help it go through. It won't even affect you." It did affect me. Of course it did. The bank ran my numbers, linked me to the debt, and set up a balloon clause they didn't understand or didn't bother to. But I signed. I co-signed, actually. And for 24 months, I watched as they made inconsistent payments, missed a few, caught up, got extensions, shuffled money around like a shell game with no ball. I didn't say anything, because back then, I still thought silence was the more generous choice. What Dana never knew, and probably still doesn't, is that after our mother passed, I received a separate inheritance check. Mom had left a smaller second account in my name alone. No explanation. No letter. Just a lump sum that showed up 1 week after the funeral. I could have kept it. Could have used it to finally take a trip or fix my teeth or pay off my own debts. Instead, I paid off Dana's hospital bills. Remember the surgery she had after that ovarian scare? The one where she cried in my lap and whispered that the insurance didn't cover half of it, and Steve had already taken out a loan they couldn't repay? I covered it, quietly, with that inheritance money. I told her it was taken care of. And she never asked how. She just blinked and said, "Well, thank God," then complained a week later that her new premiums were daylight robbery. She had the memory of a goldfish when it came to help, and the judgment of a Supreme Court when it came to faults. I don't think she ever truly saw the difference between generosity and obligation, between offering and bleeding. Now, the mortgage was coming due, all of it. Because the rate had shifted, the clause I warned Steve about, the one he said wasn't going to happen for years, had triggered. The bank sent the letter to all listed parties. And since my name was still on it, I got the news the same day they did. I imagine the moment Dana opened it, she thought the bank had made some sort of mistake. But this was the moment I had stopped playing the background character in their life story. That night, Steve came home late and went straight to the basement. Dana followed him, I'm sure, and the walls probably echoed with words I couldn't hear, but didn't need to. By morning, he had packed a bag and left a single note on the counter, just a scrap of paper with 6 words, "I didn't sign up for this." Dana didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat on the stairs like a cracked statue, frozen in a moment she didn't see coming, holding a phone that had stopped ringing hours ago. And then it buzzed. Just once. She looked at the screen and saw it, a Venmo request. From me. For 1 year of silence, $10,000. No smiley face. No explanation. Just a number and a title and a woman she didn't recognize anymore. She sat there holding the phone like it had burned her hand. Because in that moment, it wasn't just about the money or the debt or the house unraveling. It was about control. About the story she'd told everyone unraveling like a cheap sweater. And the worst part was, I hadn't said a word. Not yet. The beach house was small, almost cramped by some standards, but it breathed in a way that the old house never did, with big open windows and cracked floorboards that sang when you walked across them and a porch that caught the morning light just right. I rented it with my own name on the lease, no co-signers, no shared bills, no secrets tucked under the floorboards, just me and the sound of waves that never needed my help to keep moving. I chose the place not for the view, although it was beautiful in a quiet, aching sort of way, but for the distance, it was far enough that I could hear my own thoughts without Dana's voice ghosting around in the background like a broken recording. Weeks passed like slow-moving clouds, not entirely still but not rushing either, and for the first time in years, I let my life be uneventful. I got a new library job at a nearby town branch, where nobody knew anything about my family or the kind of silence I'd lived in. I bought groceries for one. I fixed my car without asking anyone. I didn't get texts at midnight begging for favors, and I didn't find sticky notes asking for more help just this once. The world didn't fall apart without me quietly saving it. If anything, it made me realize how little credit I gave myself for surviving the years that took everything and gave back nothing but burden. Then, one afternoon, I got a message, not from Dana, not directly, but from a neighbor back in the old neighborhood. It was short and to the point. Did you hear? Foreclosed. They're gone. That was it. I didn't ask questions and I didn't answer. I just sat with the weight of that sentence for a few minutes, letting the final nail settle into the coffin of the life I'd left behind. There had been no grand announcement, no breakdown posted online, just a quiet unraveling that had finally finished what I started the day I pulled the plug on the money. Out of something I can't quite explain, curiosity, maybe, or a strange sense of closure. I drove back to the neighborhood once, alone, no music, no calls. The house looked nothing like I remembered. The lawn was overgrown, the porch swing was broken, and the windows were dark, not just turned off dark, but hollow, empty, dead dark. There was a foreclosure notice taped to the front door, flopping in the wind like it didn't want to stay attached. I didn't get out of the car. I just sat across the street, engine idling, and watched the silence settle over the place like dust. It didn't feel like triumph. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like absence. Like something had been removed from me that I didn't realize I'd been carrying. A few days later, Dana came to my door. I don't know how she found the house. Maybe she had friends still snooping, or maybe she just followed the thread of my absence until it led her here. She looked older, not older like time had passed, but older like something inside her had cracked and never quite healed right. Her coat hung loose on her frame, and her makeup was patchy, like she'd given up halfway through pretending. She didn't knock hard, just one slow, hollow thud that I heard through the wood. I opened the door because I wanted to see her, not out of forgiveness, but because there was a part of me that needed to look at what was left. She didn't say hello. She looked at me like she was staring into a mirror that showed her past. "You planned this," she whispered, voice shaking like she didn't believe her own words. I didn't respond right away. I wanted her to sit with that sentence the way I had sat with hers at Christmas dinner. When I finally spoke, it wasn't loud, but it cut through the wind like a knife. "No, Dana," I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes, "I didn't plan this. I just stopped cleaning up after your mess." Her jaw tightened, and her eyes got glassy. "You were always jealous of me," she said, like a reflex, like an old excuse pulled off the shelf. I actually laughed. For the first time in weeks, a real, full laugh. Not cruel. Not mocking. Just shocked at how deeply she believed her own lies. "Jealous," I repeated. "No, Dana. I pitied you." She blinked like I'd slapped her. But I hadn't. I'd just told her the truth. The real, unfiltered, no holiday lights version of the truth she'd never had to face before. Because all these years, she thought I'd been clinging to her, dependent on her, trailing behind her like a lost dog. She never saw that I was the one holding the rope, keeping the whole act from falling apart. A flash came to me then, a memory I hadn't thought of in years. Dana standing in our mother's hospital room, brushing her nails against the sheet, saying, "You're lucky we're family." Back then, I'd smiled and said nothing. I thought it was love dressed in arrogance. But now I saw it clearly. She was never the generous one. She was the lucky one. Lucky I didn't let her fall apart sooner. I didn't invite her in. I didn't offer her comfort. I just let the door begin to close between us, inch by inch, until her face disappeared behind the frame. Before it shut completely, I reached over to the old radio on the shelf and turned it on. Frank Sinatra came through the speaker, his voice smooth and sure as always, singing something about second chances and strangers in the night. As I locked the door, I stood for a second with my hand on the knob and breathed in the silence. It didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. And somewhere, just barely louder than the wind, I heard myself say it, almost like I was reminding the house, the air, the version of myself I used to be. You can only play the victim so long before people start remembering what the truth sounded like. A week later, I opened a new bank account under my full name. No co-signers. No shared logins. No hidden debts. Just my name on clean paper, black ink on white. Sometimes family isn't who raised you. It's who you survived.